Can you still hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good.
Cool. Okay. Hello everyone, and welcome to this Q&A part of the San Francisco Indie Film Festival. Today I'll be talking to Ed Morris, director of How to Stop a Recurring Dream. If you're wondering why I have a British accent and this is an American festival, it's because I work for a UK-based company called Festival Formula, and sometimes we like to help across the pond. So that's there's that connection, and that's probably one of the very small silver linings of the whole COVID era. So yes, Ed, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us. First of all,
Yeah, good to be here.
As you know, I've obviously already seen How to Stop a Recurring Dream. I watched it when we took the film on. I did watch it again to sort of freshen my mind before this call, and I actually watched it with a new sound system, which was incredible because I missed a lot of the sound that you had and sort of the soundscapes, and it's sort of music. I guess it is music, but there's other sort of deep bass parts of the film where they really stood out for me. And I haven't had the chance to tell you, but I'm sure you're aware that we love your film at Festival Formula, and I really appreciate your style and the reasoning behind the film, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I guess the big main thing for me that sticks out is that there are sort of these really prevalent film themes in the film. And I guess the first sort of question is, why did you decide to sort of connect those themes, sort of the dreamscapes, sort of kidnapping, separation? How does that come together? Or does it start with one and then you add others? Or
well, actually, the title of the film came while we were shooting it. Strangely,
okay.
We had a kind of working title that was never right, that I didn't like, but and when I got that title, I wanted to come up with a title that sort of underlines something that was sort of not there directly on the screen, that was other, that seemed almost inconsequential to the film. Because you could look at the film on a very basic level and go, well, it's a sort of it's a bit of a road movie. It's two girls on a chase. It's a chase essentially. It's one looking. It's a chase to. It's just a chase to the cemetery side, and so you could look at it on a very physical and very literal level. But the minute I got that title, it sort of changed it, and I liked the whole notion of it being. I liked the long title for one because I thought that helped define it in the way that Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, just a title that definitely says this is not Jaws, this is not,
Yeah.
This is sorry. So that felt right. But what the title did is it's an instruction basically. It gave you it's watch this and you'll find out how to do something. It's like how to fix a
it's that level of intrigue.
A central heating system in the middle of winter, or a dryer and spin dryer and washing machine. So I liked that very literal notion about the title, but how it directed you to something completely other. It directed you to the subplot in the film, I guess, or a theme within it that is woven through it, but not there in front of your eyes. So then, as we were shooting, I wrote another film scene, the middle film scene, where she drifts into a sort of daydream at the garage while they're waiting at the garage.
Yes.
And came up with that idea and shot it the morning that we were at the garage. I thought, shit, the only time that's a place to do it. So literally we went in and shot that moment, or we accommodated we shot enough at the garage to accommodate that, where she stares at the sweets and drifts off, and then we shot a third when we were shooting the dream sequences. We shot a third one to go in the middle. So there are essentially the dream sequences in it, kind of the three really important beats, because the first one raises the problem, her mother, and not being able to get her mother from the hospital. That continued attachment, if you like. The second one is where she goes down to the stairs but is yanked back from it, caught in the current action. And then the third one where she goes down and it's the phone that gives her, she is guided to her sister by the sort of voice of the mother, so to speak. There's a few ways you can read it, but that's how I read it.
Okay, that's interesting, because I think that it does sort of, when you have that sort of dream, like you say, that theme woven throughout, it does give you sort of a bit more artistic room, I guess, because it doesn't have to be a generic narrative as such. So was that another reason for it? You wanted to explore?
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit genre fuzzy. You know, it does that thing, which you can't do if you've got, you know, if you're making a great big film and it has to hit certain targets. You can sort of bend the rules a bit when you're making any film that it's just yours and it's an indie film. So that was something that was intentional. But I liked the whole theme as well of kind of, in a very ordinary context, we're in suburbia, right? Something happens that is a very other. You know, there's an event in your life, and these events can happen in life. It might be once or twice, it might be a moment, you know, in a supermarket, or, you know, it's usually when you least suspect it, when something quite profound can happen. So I saw it as a moment in time in this family's life when something very profound happens to all of them, really. They're all caught up in a kind of, you know, a confluence of energy that, or a moment in time that just seems very surreal when you look at it. But you know, when you put the parts together, because you cut back to the mum and the dad, you know, little things that just link both of this, the A and the B story, are quite sort of what would we call it, serendipitous, or, you know.
Yeah, that's the perfect way of putting it, I guess. And I think that it's interesting that you talk about the mum and dad, because I think that the performances, obviously, when you set out to make a film like this, have to obviously reflect your ambitions, and I think that they do. I think the tone is set very well with the initial argument that they're having around the table, and I remember watching that the first time and thinking, wow, this is how it's done, because it felt very real. It felt like a conversation hundreds of families have had up and down this country, and, you know, working class families. I come from a working class background, so leaning back on the chair, it was, and the sort of the overlay of the conversation, I was like, that's really well done. It feels really well. She's like, he breaks the tumblers, and he's like, well, I was going to use those, it was for my wedding, and that really, to me, sets the tone. Okay, this is a really real, you know, the dialogue's quite subtle, but it feels very real. But then something very surreal, as you say, happens. So yeah, I guess so. That's sort of the parents, but then that moves me on to talk about the two younger leads. How was that working with sort of not so much children, but obviously a lot of responsibility on quite young?
It's interesting because in terms of probably hours in front of the camera, you know, Lily, who's the younger girl, plays Kelly, was probably quite a bit more experienced than Ruby, who was older.
Oh, okay.
You know, Ruby's since been in a very big Bridgerton, a Netflix series that's been very successful over the Christmas. So she's suddenly gone from a complete unknown to, you know, she's now north of 100,000 followers on Instagram.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so she's suddenly become a bit of a star.
I have to say, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, good. So I'm pleased you think that. And yeah, you know, she was. It was a big thing for her. You know, she's a young girl. She's 20 or 21 when we did it, and first, you know, I mean, it's not the first time she's been in front of camera, but it was a big undertaking to be the star of the film. And she's a method actor, so she brings a lot of high emotion and tension and real visceral kind of pain and energy to the moment, to when you're filming. I mean, you know, when you see method actors really delve in like that and it goes off, I mean, it really goes off. We're not messing around. I mean, it's pretty, you know, it's you got to accommodate that. So there were some hairy, scary moments through filming because we were having to accommodate that, but move at a pace as well. We shot this in 10 days. I mean, there were about 126 scenes in that film. I mean, we were running while we were doing this, literally running. It's like finish a set, bang, like, you know.
Wow.
I mean, unreal. So to just figure out your own continuity within that, you know, just
I mean,
what you had to do was hard. But for the actors, I mean, that's quite an undertaking, you know.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
they were brilliant.
When you talk about the journey as well, like you say, the continuity of, because she really does have that journey of getting to the cemetery, and there's the bit where she tries to steal the bike, where she looks really physically, you know, beat, doesn't she? And like you say, that I didn't even think twice, but yeah, she looks as if it could be, you know, she'd been sleeping rough for a few days, but yeah. And also there's the scene where I've got them in my notes here, the scene where she talks to her sister in the boot, which
Yeah.
stood out to me, because it's like, if you're just watching that and you're just sort of watching a film, you're like, oh, she's talking to her sister, but we know she's not talking to her sister in that booth, and it's quite a really intense, and I just think for her, she has to sit there and
Yeah.
have this real deep, genuine conversation with the back of a car.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, I like that visual. Funny enough, that visual came from something, was triggered by something, a postcard that I've had for a long time, of just a guy stood on a, it's a surreal postcard. I don't know who shot it, but it was someone just talking to a deer. But it was obviously a stuffed deer. They've just got a stuffed deer and put it there. And then he's talk, like, but in conversation with it, like he's
Okay.
his hands. And I thought that's just a very interesting thing when someone, and you can see it on the street, you know, there'll be someone behind a wall and someone standing, it looks like they're talking to the wall. But I thought that was interesting, just her talking to the inanimate object, you know. But there's a lot of themes of that throughout the whole film. So when you're going back to your family around the table, the idea of that is it's 4 people around a round table, you know, it's a place of congregation. It's where a family come together and meet and face each other, but they couldn't be further apart emotionally and psychologically.
Yeah.
You know, and you see that going throughout the film. Kelly ends up in the boot and she's, again, distanced. There's a veil or a screen behind them, between them, sorry. So yeah, that was a moment. And of course it led up to the fake moment of them, of hope. And then, you know, there's that kind of just getting close and pulling apart, which, you know, the midpoint is a very clear point of that, when you think, oh, okay, right, they've got half a chance around the fire. There's kind of,
Yeah.
you know, and then in the morning it all kicks off, and then it becomes, you see, I wanted a chase within a chase, because the mum and dad and the police are chasing them, and then she loses her sister, then she's chasing her sister. So it's a very, you know,
Yeah, no, and it does sort of help build that sort of drama. It's interesting that you talk about the sort of inanimate objects as well, because there is a part of the film that slightly irrelevant to this Q&A, but it really stood out to me because I just like the way that it was done. And it's when you know, the sex toys found in the glove compartment.
Yeah.
The tension that brings into the room. It was just so well done, and the way he's looking at it, and he's like, and you really feel like, yeah, that sort of his own head saying, what do I do? Do I do the right thing? And say, don't, you know. So that was a nice little touch. Obviously, that is, I suppose it's, you know, it's quite funny that that it is what it is, and the lady finds it walking her dogs. But I think ultimately that really sets like a nice precedent for like a crack.
It's slightly surreal. You can kind of laugh at it with one cap.
Well, I'm glad you said that.
Well, yeah. Well, also, just it's what's funny is that the dad wants something back, a clue. Where are they? Where's the car? Have they been sighted? Anything, you know, a shoelace, anything. But what comes back is the only thing he doesn't want to come back. You know, it's just something that was hidden in the glove compartment. We don't know. We don't really know the story. Where did it come from? Why is it there? Is he cheating on her? Is he using it? But you just don't know. But it's another layer of ambiguity that just sets that moment in time into a spin. You know.
Yeah. Talking about the characters, which we have done a little bit there, I do have to ask about the chap that she meets, the hitchhiker.
Yeah.
What's his
Chin is his name.
Okay, so I've seen on your Instagram you use him quite a lot in just sort of like Laurel announcements, and he does have this very striking like face. I don't know if that's a fair thing to say. He definitely stands out on the white suit and the red tie.
Yeah.
So when we first see him get introduced, I'm thinking, is this some sort of metaphor? Is this a real person?
Yeah. And
obviously, it's up to you if you want to leave a certain level of ambiguity, but I do have to ask: is there any of that, or is it just this guy who tries his luck with?
Well, there's all of that and nothing, and it was intentional. It was intentional because when we were casting, we were getting guys in that were kind of, you know, we didn't want central casting drug dealer, you know, provincial, you know, you didn't want that, and you didn't want to go. And he came in for another part, and he came in, you know, that he wasn't right for. Yeah. But I just thought, oh my God, he's really like, you know, because Andre has something kind of, there was just something, there was clearly something sort of interesting about Andre's sexuality.
Yeah.
You know, that I really liked, and I liked how that we couldn't really latch onto that. If there was a moment with the script when that guy was going to become a bit of a love interest for Yakira.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, but I thought that started to take it into a bit of a sort of too teeny kind of, you know, I didn't want them to end up in a clinch by the fireside. It just would have. So the minute we found him, it just sort of twisted things a bit and helped what I wanted to do, because I wanted the whole thing to start. I mean, look, we start in a 2 up, 2 down in a back street in Epsom, you know, in Surrey. I mean, it's a sort of, you know, every day and as comfy and as, dare I say it, white as it gets, you know.
Yeah. Sure.
And so that's why Yakira's part was important in there, and what she signals and telegraphs as a character and as a person. So when we get to Chin, it's just gone a bit bizarre, you know. It's gone like, we get to that. I mean, when he steps into that car, the whole thing goes pretty mental.
Yeah, that is the moment.
And that's a weird scene. That's like, I mean, that scene was a really difficult scene to film and cut, a really hard scene to cut. I mean, we were days and days and days cutting that scene, because the nuance was so fun, because you had to believe it, but you had to be be going, oh, this is really weird. I mean, you just have to be right on the edge of now. It's kind of riding that. There's a few places where the film rides that. You're right on the edge of pushing people to go, you know, you're close to going, no, this is implausible, I don't believe this. But you kind of buy it. You just kind of, because you're going, oh, it's sort of telling us we're in some sort of dreamland, you know, we're in the literal woods now. I mean, the script is a very, very cliched structure, you know, not cliched content, but cliched structure. I mean, it's you know, it's based on a mythical journey down to the last detail, you know, even down to the mechanical thing, you know, instead of a mechanical owl, it's a phone that talks to her and pushes her over the threshold, you know, and gets her going. I mean, you know, so Chin, was, and then I just kept being sort of going counter to intuition, really, you know. What would he be wearing? Let's put him in a white suit, you know, because if you were trying to hide, if you were scooting around the country from, I don't know, festival to festival with a big bag of drugs, pills, the last thing you do is kind of try and make yourself look over inconspicuous, because the police are more likely to notice you.
Yeah,
you go, back my red hair and wear a white suit with a red tie, you know, and that kind of works.
Yeah, and you do get that sort of festival vibe, and you know, you sort of do wonder what else he's got in his bag. But yeah, I did think that sort of, it was an interesting way of introducing him, and an interesting take on that, because like you say, you could have gone for a much more generic drug dealer, or whatever you would call it, and then you could have had that the scene where Yakira seems to get interested. But it's interesting.
In an earlier version of the script, there was one really nice moment that happened when they confront him much later on, before they get to the cemetery, and in order to not be recognized, he makes her change clothes with him, so she ends up in the white suit.
Oh, okay.
And that, I really wanted to do that just because of how it would have looked.
Yeah.
But also, it's a sort of that role reversal thing, the kind of in part, you know, like she becomes him, she becomes a vigilante, she becomes a criminal in the white suit, and he becomes inconspicuous and disappears into the woods, you know. So
yeah,
but that didn't happen for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Yakira's hair at the end as well. Sorry, when you say, I'm imagining her and her hair, it's just, it would have been really.
Well, that's another visual thing. You see her hair, she goes from mad, personally, but with very tight, neat braids going back, to hair mad, but sane. You know, that's her journey, is from kind of an imposed madness through the family goings on to sanity. She, you know, and actually her journey is, and the biggest arc in the thing is the dad, really. The dad's the one that has to change. The dad's the one that's faulted, really, you know.
Yeah, and I like the touch with, it's almost the flowers.
Yeah,
it's like a double pin drop, isn't it? Because he realizes that he hasn't let go of her, but he also realizes where his daughters are going.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I'm pleased you take that out of it. Yeah, the flowers are kind of a bit of a problem. He realizes, well, he's bought the flowers for his current wife.
Yeah. And
she exposes him. She says, "No, I don't like those. I've told you that before." Yeah. You know whose favourite flowers those were. Oh, and that sort of that linked with,
Yeah. No, that was brilliant.
And the flowers end up with the person they should be, you know.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Also, so going back, I mean, I feel like we discussed the sort of the film itself, but just stepping back a little bit. So, at what point did you made this? You say in 10 days, and was that in When did you shoot it? It was 2019?
You know, it's 2 years ago now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. 2000.
Yeah.
Okay. So, at what point did you decide you wanted to make a feature film? I understand this is your first feature. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, I've been directing for a while. You know, I mean, I've been directing for a while. You know, I've been quite a few, notched up a fair few weeks, months, years behind the camera.
Yeah.
So, and I just, it's a number of things. You know, it's a number of things. I thought I had something to say. I wanted a grander canvas for expression.
Mm.
And when someone says, "What do you do?" and you say, "I'm a film director," I say, "Oh, what films have you done?" You say, "Well, I haven't done any films. I've done a lot of really good commercials and some music promos and a documentary." Yeah. You know, so I think you just got to. I mean, I don't know. You give these things a go. You know, it sort of snowballs. It starts off as a could I, should I, would I? Then you give it a go. I mean, the first thing. So there's a lot of things. You know, the first thing that if you want to make a film, you've got to have a script. You know, and if you want to get a good script, you'll find that there's a lot of good scripts out there, but if they're any good, there's a lot of people after them, you know. So then I thought, well, I better write one. So, you know, this whole thing was as much a journey in writing as it was in directing, you know.
That's amazing. And I think that, you know, when you ask a filmmaker, do you want to make a feature film, and they haven't made one, they're going to say yes. So it does feel like a bit of a generic question, but I think it is important, you know, if someone's made their first feature film.
I think it's a really stupid thing to make a feature film, unless well, it's a mad thing to do anyway. I mean, this is a little indie movie, you know. We made it for.
Yeah.
You say, how did you fund it? My answer is always the best way to fund a film is write a cheap one, you know. So
yeah.
But so you got to write something. That's the great thing about writing. You can write something that you know you can afford to make and make well, hopefully, you know, do justice to. But what was I going to say? I think it's a crazy thing to make a film. So I think you've got to really think hard. I mean, I think with any work of art, whether it's it's a poem 4 lines long, or a painting, or you know, a novel, or a feature film, whatever it might be. I think the biggest question is always what right do I have to do this? You know, why should I impose my thoughts on the public out there? So I think it has to start with some sort of sense of altruism. You've got to be. It's for them. It's for, you know. A film especially.
Yeah, that's really.
A piece of music can be obtuse. You can do it for yourself and not care about the public. But a film has to be. Yeah, you can read all the theory, the books, you know. But I read a great definition of what a screenplay should be at any one moment, and someone said at any one moment, all that you have to do on the screen is show something, or say something, or have something happening that makes me want to watch the next moment that's coming. You know, it's kind of it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And if that carries on, then if you've got to the end of it, then you've done the job.
That's quite interesting that you say that and you are that honest, because I think a lot of filmmakers, when you ask them that question, they get very internal and they say, "This is why I want to do this," you know. But for you to turn around and say, quite honestly, there is a reason why I wanted to do this, but ultimately, you know, I was still trying to make something that people would want to watch, or you know.
Well, I'd got. I haven't been confident, overconfident, or you know, too sure of myself through any of this. But I knew there's an interesting moment when I said when I'd got a first edit. No, about a few edits down, and my son asked if he could see. So little, you know, at the time he was, you know, it's like 11, 12.
Yeah.
He asked if he could see it. I said, well, I can't show you it because it's not finished, but I'll show you the first 15 minutes. So right up to the sort of, you know, right up to just after the argument, I think. Okay. So I watched it. And I said, right, that's it now. You can't watch it. And he said, okay, Dad. And then he went outside, and then I put it down, put the computer down, watched it on the computer. And then he said, about 10 minutes later, he came and said, Dad, really innocently. And I'd forgotten about watching it. So he was clever. He kind of knew what he was doing. He said, oh, Dad, can I just borrow a computer? I've got to get online to do some homework. I said, oh, yeah, of course you can. Yeah. Gave him the computer. He went straight into his room, set it all up, and just watched the whole bloody edit all the way through. He watched the whole bit. Yeah, so, which I thought, the fact that he'd done that and the fact that he'd watched the whole lot, I thought that's a pretty good sign.
That's the test. Yeah, that's the test.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's quite that's quite sweet, isn't it, actually?
Yeah.
You did that. Now, it wouldn't be, obviously, I know we're all sick of talking about it, Ed, but it wouldn't be fair of me to not ask this, considering, you know, the film's festival journey and everything. So it leads me on to when you edited it, you've done it, you wanted to go onto the festival circuit, and you began to do that. How concerned were you initially with the pandemic, and you know, what was this
Well,
going to mean for your film, or was you just hoping for the best, or did you not have any really high expectations in the first place that COVID could sort of pull away?
you know, I had no expectations in the first place. Once you've made a film, I mean, it's interesting. The filmmaking process is like the film making process is like that, right?
Mm.
That, but there's sort of three stages to it, right? There's writing, getting a script, and raising the money and the pre-production. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's massive. Getting the
Yeah,
money is the biggest part of anything, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
massive. Then there's shooting the film, which is like, it's like a pinhead in the middle of a
yeah,
of this. You know, it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's nothing. It's 10 days. It's been 6 years.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
then there's all the stuff afterwards, which I had no idea about. So I came into this very naively.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I've actually, despite the corona, despite the fact, so two things. One, you know, I'm a single working parent. You know, I'm trying to make ends meet, and I've got people that rely on me and people to look after. Even if the, out of corona, I couldn't have flown round to all these different film festivals. It would have been lovely. It would have been literally, I'd have taken the year off and been flying around.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
we've done fairly well. People like it, you know, and it's succeeded more than I thought it would have so far. I'm only about 50% into our budget. So that's really lovely news. So in a way, it's served the purpose of being able to. I'm connecting as much as I possibly can, so it's helped that because it is online, and that's made that part of it easier. But who knows what we'd have missed out on? And you know, but there's also the other thing, which is, you know, there's a lot of people at home. There's a lot of people watching TV and content of all sorts. More films being watched in more formats than ever before in
Sure, yeah, it's true.
human history. So you know, and they're all at home at the moment. So I thought that might have helped us a little bit as well. You just never know. It swings and roundabouts. But you know, but it is, what is sad is you know, it's sad for the business in general. You know, I mean, it stopped shooting. Everyone stopped shooting, and I'm still trying. You know, it's what I do for a living. You know, I'm treating on. I've just put a treatment in today on something that I'm hoping to shoot. So, you know, we're all hoping. You know, there's a lot of people out there that, you know, the ball needs to get rolling for, because it's
For sure.
it's fit. Some people are going to end up, you know, in a lot of trouble unless something happens quick.
For sure. No, I agree. I think that we could we could discuss that till the cows come home.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's lovely to hear you put it that way, Ed. I think that's the attitude you've got to have, and I know in your director's statement you talk about how, you know, the film relates to some of your own personal life story as well, and sort of about dealing with loss, and you know, just enjoying life because it's the brief moment. Almost how you talk about the pinhead of shooting, you could say that's life. But yeah, so it's nice to sort of say that about the pandemic, and you know, we've just got to do what we've got to do. So I have two last questions. The penultimate one, I'm going to pretend that this isn't just purely for me, and I'm going to guise it, and this is part of the Q&A. But do you have any advice for young aspiring filmmakers?
Oh God.
I realise I'll put you on the spot, but I like to ask filmmakers that because I'm quite young myself. I'm interested in filmmaking, and I always, when I'm watching a Q&A or a video or a podcast, I always really like those sort of questions.
Yeah. So I try to put so the answer to this question, right, I tried to put succinctly on a piece of paper recently. Okay. And when I read it back, I was so annoyed with myself for sounding so much like I knew what I was talking about. I've actually got the piece of paper here that I scrubbed all that. I scrubbed it all out.
Oh no!
I know, and I thought, and I kind of like the look of that, so I've pinned it on my wall. I've pinned it on my wall to kind of remind me to be cautious of my own flannel, you know, my own point of view. But there is a couple of things that I think have helped me. That's all I can say, and it goes back to a little bit about what we were talking about earlier. Is that this is you shouldn't. I don't think you should think. I think your directing and your writing and your directing changes dramatically when you stop thinking about your job as creating content, actually what's there on the screen, literally, and start thinking of your job as creating outtake. You know. So what you're directing is the emotions of the person watching the film.
Right.
This is the visuals and the lighting and the actors and everything there are just conduits and tools to manipulate and move, coerce and move the person into through emotional states. And that's what you've got to, when you're looking at takes and when you're looking at setting stuff up and when you're looking at actors. And I mean, actors know this. This is where actors are. This is why actors are brilliant. Actors know this initially, you know, that's what they do. But it's very easy as a director and as a filmmaker to get caught up in what is in front of your face or your eyes, you know, and lose being only and solely tuned into how it's affecting your emotions.
Yeah, that's nice.
So to think of yourself as a director of outtake and not content, I think is a big leap. It's a big leap.
Well, I think that that's very nicely put. And although I put you on the spot, I think that that sort of nugget there is brilliant. Yeah.
And I can tell it in people's work immediately. You know it.
Yeah.
You just feel it. I think if it comes out of here, it goes into there. If it comes out of the here, it goes into there. And it's
yeah, I see what you mean.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that's helped me. That's helped me a bit here and there.
Awesome. Ed, I did have a last question, but I think I want to leave you on that. I really like how that. Yeah, I love that. I really like that. So
that affected me emotionally.
Yeah, it did. It did. I think that's a nice little end to the Q&A, and hopefully people watch that and watch the film, and yeah, cool. Yeah. All right, so all that's left to say is thank you to the audience that have watched. I hope you enjoy the film when you watch it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of what the festival has to offer. Also,
San Francisco Festival is a great one. So honestly, I'm so really made up that we've got into it. It's really great.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. Ed, I hope to speak to you again sometime. I'm quite ashamed that this is the first time since I've been emailing you for the past 9 months or whatever it's been, but cheers. I actually really enjoyed that, and
great.
I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, take care. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Ed.
Okay. Bye-bye.